How we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on the Pitt Panthers Football Network as we welcome you back to the Season 7 2022 Around the NCAA recap show. Your Pitt Panthers coming off their third game in 3 weeks and a dramatic victory, another close affair, this time against Florida State, where they came away with a Johnny Midday save the day game-winning field goal as time expired to win 32-29. 16 fourth quarter points for the Panthers, a team that, you know, they were very hit and miss in the opening couple of frames. 13 points in the first half. Florida State 21. They were down. They battled back, and in the fourth quarter turned it around. Not least of all, thank you to a huge punt return touchdown from D'Anthony Hamilton. Beautiful, beautiful score for him. The Panthers struggled again in the red zone. We talked about how it was all field goals last week against Tennessee. 4 field goals in the red zone for the Panthers today. 1 touchdown on 7 red zone trips. Compare that to the efficiency of the Florida State offense, where they had 3 red zone trips and 3 touchdowns. That's how they stayed in this game when the Panthers were 467 yards to 267 yards of total offense. And, of course, the turnovers don't help either. C.J. Kirk, of course, with that interception to Kajai Goodwin. 299 yards passing still, though, for the sophomore signal caller, and a touchdown in the Panthers' victory. Noah Brooks did come in and throw 1 pass for 26 yards as well when Kirk was out with a back injury, but he came back, battled through it, ran for a touchdown on the opening drive as well, 54 yards for him. Davion Reynolds, 76 yards on the ground. Ceno Rogers held in check on his jet sweep game. Only 3 carries, 6 yards for him, though he did have a productive day catching the football as he has done. The redshirt freshman out of Madeira, Ohio, 5 catches for 85 yards. Davion Reynolds out of the backfield adding in 37-yard long, 81 yards on 4 grabs. Keith Onyango, 50 yards on 4 catches. One guy that you don't see on the score sheet, though, KJ Welsh, held off the board there. He did have 9 yards on 1 jet sweep, but otherwise not a ton of activity from who would have expected to be the Panthers' #1 receiver coming into the season, though that job looks like it's been usurped by the very dynamic and productive Ceno Rogers, who, of course, redshirted last season. Defensively, the Panthers were led in tackles by Matt Emery, Adarion Mitchell, also 3 tackles for a loss for the senior captain and outside linebacker. Malachi Bordeaux added a sack, the other Panther defensive captain and redshirt senior. Sack for him. Jalen Hills had a sack. Mac McAlevey with a sack as well. So the Panthers defensive line doing a good job getting after the Florida State signal callers. In spite of the affair, though, Florida State didn't drop back to throw much. I think we saw they were, 13 of 17 passing the football. Cedric Granger did have a big interception. Brian Youngling with what should have been an interception that he could have taken back the other way for 6. Instead was just a deflection. Pitt also forced 2 fumbles. Jalen Hill and Malachi Bordeaux each forcing a fumble on their sacks, so the Panthers were unable to recover either of those opportunities. Florida State did retain possession of the football, but sooner or later you would expect that the fumble luck is going to have to turn towards the Panthers. Johnny Midday, the sophomore, cool as the other side of the pillow. 4 field goals on 4 attempts. Long was a 38, so nothing particularly extravagant distance-wise. You can see he had 3 field goals from inside of 29 yards, but they all were crucial in allowing the Panthers to secure victory here today. Of course, none bigger than the game winner at the end of the contest as time expired. Josh Feldman, the freshman punter, also 91 yards on 2 attempts. Nice game for him. Of course, big story, 42-yard punt return touchdown for D'Anthony Hamilton. What's even funnier is it was a 42-yard punt return touchdown. He caught it in Florida State territory and still was able to take it to the house. What a ridiculous return for him. Shane Parks led the way for the Florida State offense, 202 yards passing, very efficient on only 17 attempts and a touchdown. Ja'Shawn McNeil did have 2 touchdowns running, but only 37 yards and 16 carries. The Panthers fairly well kept him in check. No run from Florida State longer than 12 yards on the day. and McNeil's longest was only 9 yards overall. Barry also with a 46-yard grab, and Sledge with a 66-yard runaway touchdown grab. You take away a couple of deep plays that beat the Panthers, which is known to happen in the Pat Narduzzi defense, which oftentimes leaves defensive backs on an island to get pressure on the quarterback and to stop and shut down the run. Other than those couple of big plays, you take that away, and the Pitt defense was fantastic today. Like we said, under 300 yards of offense. They gave up some points, but in terms of total yardage, very, very impressive performance from the Panthers. Of course, Kajai Goodwin, the Bradenton, Florida recruit, stayed near home to go to Florida State. He's been a fantastic player for the Seminoles. He was a guy that Pitt really, really wanted to bring in. They weren't able to do so, and he paid dividends for Florida State here with the interception. Had a deflection that could have been an interception as well. Chauncey Wheatley, one of the best defensive tackles in the country, with a sack in this game. Florida State showed off. They had a good defense. You know, they gave up some yards to the Panthers, but they had that bend not break mentality, kept Pitt out of the end zone more often than not, and gave themselves an opportunity to win the game. Scott Cook did miss one 50-plus yard field goal, which you can't blame the kicker for that, but when he misses that and they lose by 3, that's always tough to see. Marcus Brady, decent day punting the football, although, of course, his one punt did allow the Panthers to score. So big win for Pitt in an ACC matchup, their first ACC win, so they go to 1-0 in ACC play. Virginia Tech also improves to 1-0 with a 30-27 victory over NC State. Wake Forest falls to 1-2 with a loss to Louisiana Monroe in this contest. ULM with the game-winning kick with 11 seconds to play, very similar to the Pitt game. North Carolina blows out East Carolina. Louisville in their annual rivalry matchup beats Kentucky. Duke outlasts Memphis 35-26. Syracuse go to 2-1 with a victory narrowly over Vermont FCS school. Ball State beats Boston College handily, and Georgia Tech falls to BYU. So not exactly a banner day for ACC football with some of those losses toward the end. Penn State let UCF know, hey, you're not there yet. Jaden Maxwell Jr., of course, the freshman sensation quarterback, #1 recruit from last year. 3 interceptions in this game. He was absolutely dominated by Marquise Gordon. 2 touchdowns for him, 253 passing. He also ran for 70-plus yards as well, so huge game for him. Another dual-threat quarterback that very, very impressively put on a great performance was Iowa State quarterback Michael Robinson. 315 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. He also ran for a touchdown, 31 yards in their victory over their heated rivals, the Iowa Hawkeyes, in the Cy-Hawk rivalry matchup. Mississippi State knocks off Auburn. LSU blows out Mizzou. Georgia 42-23 over North Texas. Big game there for Carter Ford and A.J. Jackson Stroud in their victory over North Texas. Great win there for Georgia. Ford, you can see, had a really, really nice contest in this one. Put up a great showing. Georgia team that looked very, very good against Pitt last year, and look at that. They're just relying on the dual threat ability of Ford. 182 passing, 3 touchdowns, but he can also add it in on the ground as well. Ran for 83 yards on 12 carries. A.J. Jackson Stroud, 145 yards and a touchdown for the sophomore. And then Huggins, of course, the senior, 81 yards as well. So very well-balanced rushing attack from the Georgia Bulldogs. They can certainly ground and pound it. Oklahoma, big victory, 52-27 over Indiana. And Taylor Savage just doing what Taylor Savage does. 420 yards passing, 4 touchdowns for the expected Heisman favorite that's quarterbacking the defending national champions. Williams with 10 catches in that victory for Oklahoma. Maryland goes to 2-0 with a surprising victory over number 10 Wisconsin, 36-30 in overtime. Big win there for the Terps to help build a little bit of confidence for a program that has struggled in recent years. Washington, a team that we know won the college football playoff a few years back, the 2018 season, so that's over 4 seasons ago now at this point, back in year 3. Big win for them over USC. And Michigan, 38-10 blowout of top 10 Notre Dame. Huge win there for the Wolverines, the Harbaugh program, looking to get back to relevancy after a few down years recently. Tennessee, big win, 37-17 over Oregon, so that makes that Pitt victory look even better after the Ducks get smoked. Bama, 36-29 outlast Texas A&M, and Ole Miss falls to 1-2, 1 year removed from making the national championship game, and Texas dominates them 26-10. Ole Miss, we know, lost Heisman winner Dustin Young. They lost tight end / receiver in the mold of a Kyle Pitts. Jared Bowie lost some great receivers as well, some good defensive talent, but disappointing start to the season for Ole Miss. Around the NCAA, quarterback Carl Armstrong of Washington State wins Player of the Week, 6 touchdowns, almost 400 yards of offense. Willis Melton for Texas Tech, 2 INTs and 2 forced fumbles in their win over TCU. For Pitt, though, Malachi Bordeaux, the 5th-year senior captain, defensive tackle, moved inside from defensive end, and he's paying dividends here. Sack and a forced fumble in Pitt's win over Florida State, wins Defensive Player of the Week. Devin Blake, the senior halfback for North Carolina, 3 touchdown performance in their victory over East Carolina, wins ACC Offensive Player of the Week. Some big performances there. In the Heisman race, you can see D.D. Harris, Ohio State quarterback, dual threat, very good player. Pocket passer Will Alford. Carter Ford, of course, moving up with a 4-touchdown performance in Georgia's victory over North Texas. Devin Blake with that 3-touchdown win in the victory over ECU. He's already at 5 touchdowns, 150 yards a game in 3 performances, and a receiving touchdown, so 2 touchdowns a game right now for the UNC running back. And Taylor Savage, I mean, what more can you say? 14 touchdowns in 3 games against 2 interceptions. Unbelievable start to the season for the junior quarterback. Expected #1 pick in the draft next year, should he declare, which many expect he will. But the defending national champions stay undefeated, and all the big names are at the top there. Clemson, Bama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, LSU, Michigan up to 2-0 now with their victory over Notre Dame. Penn State in the top 10 as well after blowing out UCF. You can see Notre Dame only falls back to number 10 with that loss to Michigan. Oklahoma State up to 9. And then a number of big-name teams that already have an early loss but are still hanging around the polls. Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Georgia, Oregon, Florida. UNC jumps up to number 15 as they're 3-0. Iowa State up to 19 at 2-0. Miami's 20 at 2-0. So some interesting teams that could climb up the polls. Cincinnati, another team. AC Reese at quarterback. They're 1-0. We're off this past week, but they're up to number 16 as they stay unbeaten. Tennessee back into the polls with their victory, but Pitt still unranked, still not receiving votes. So interesting to see right now how they haven't climbed into the national consciousness just yet. Maybe losing, barely beating a uninspiring Florida State team is possibly the reason for that. The Panthers have really struggled to put away some teams this year. They, of course, had an early blowout victory in the first game of the season against West Virginia, but that West Virginia team does not look very promising the way the season has gone so far. A couple of big matchups on the docket in the ACC. A non-conference one, though, between Oklahoma State and Clemson is arguably the biggest one on the slate in college football this weekend. Undefeated Cal takes on a ranked Arizona State, though. That should be a very good game. Cal actually looking talented, but Arizona State with some good players. Wisconsin looks to bounce back after an early loss to Maryland with a matchup away against undefeated Nebraska in Lincoln. Nebraska hasn't been great. They typically finish 8-4, 7-5 every year, so we'll see if this is a year where they can go on a nice run. Michigan takes on Charlotte. Penn State will host Kent State. Michigan State will take on Notre Dame, reeling from a big blowout loss to Michigan last week. The Spartans will look to tack on some pain and suffering there to the Fighting Irish. UNC will host Wake Forest in an ACC battle, and then the big matchup, Oklahoma State traveling to Death Valley to take on Clemson. The Tigers led by an incredible offense, huge passing attack from Will Alford and a number of different contributors there as well against a very solid Oklahoma State team that's been battle-tested so far, 3-0 already this season. Clemson's only had 1 matchup, and so maybe that rest versus rust will possibly play a factor in this game. Florida State taking on Florida, the Gators taking on Tennessee. Of course, the Vols only lost this year coming to Pitt, while Florida very underachieving the last few years. We'll see what they can do to try and get a big SEC win here in their early slate. And then USC looking to bounce back after their loss last week. They'll take on Oregon, who also lost last week. One of those streaks has to break in the upcoming week. And then Auburn taking on LSU. The Tigers led behind their quarterback Calicolio. Some incredible receivers. Jacoby Sutton might be the best receiver in college football. And yet their passing offense has just been okay so far, but I would expect them to have a big performance here at home against Auburn. And then West Virginia taking on Maryland, little local rivalry matches. We see the Mountaineers have struggled this year, 1-2 to start the season so far. And of course, for your Pitt Panthers, they're going to take on the UCLA Bruins. Huge non-conference matchup for the Panthers, taking on a Pac-12 rival that they have not seen in many years. One of the best script battle in college football as the Panthers take on UCLA. This is going to be an incredible matchup. Of course, the Panthers played UCLA last year as well. Came away with a dramatic come-from-behind victory that was kind of one of the CJ Kirk coming-out parties of the season. Led the Panthers to a huge come-from-behind victory in the fourth quarter. I think they had 21, maybe 24 points in the fourth quarter to come from behind and beat UCLA by a point. Incredible win for the Panthers last year. A little bit of a shakeup in the UCLA lineup now. They don't have a lot of the guys back from last year. They do have have Jacob Babineau, the outside linebacker, who's an incredible player. But they have Ayaz Durbin at quarterback now. Jacques Mitchell, of course, off to the NFL. They have Sanders leading the way at running back, 329 yards and 4 touchdowns so far this season. But still some very, very talented players. A couple of good receivers. It's a team to watch out for. Justin Wright, the #1 receiver, is very, very, very good. What was incredible about UCLA is last year they had a 2 running back attack. Neither of those running backs are here anymore. They're both seniors, which means Sanders is the go-to guy, but he's been incredible so far this year. Durbin's interesting. Not particularly imposing as a quarterback, but they do have Connor Grimes right behind him as well, the sophomore, who's a very good passer, not particularly mobile, and Roberts, the freshman, 75 overall, who's a guy that, you know, depending on how the season goes, maybe they turn to him because he has a little bit more of the raw talent while not possessing any kind of speed or mobility. But you can see Durbin, not a lot of throw power. Accuracy's okay. He doesn't grade particularly high. It's not somebody the Panthers will watch out for, which is why Chris Sanders is the guy that can do so much damage for the Bruins. Decent speed, great ability, can get away from tacklers. Very, very good player is Chris Sanders. Dustin Wright, the freshman, right behind him as well. Not a ton of speed on Wright, but he's a very talented player, and he should get a good piece of the carries for UCLA moving forward. Justin Wright, though, one of the best receivers in college football right now. Great player. Underwhelming speed, I think underappreciated speed, especially with Rashad Hall opposite him. 96 speed, fantastic player. But Markel Wheeler, Marvin Vincent, Tyree Lambert. I mean, look at all of these upperclassmen receivers that UCLA is blessed with right now. So it's unfortunate they don't have the most polished of signal callers to chuck the pigskin to them, but still very, very talented in that position. That doesn't even leave out their tight end, Josh Riley, the redshirt senior, who's fantastic player in his own right. So this UCLA passing attack could be very good if Durbin has a good day, and that's the thing with the Panthers defense. They like to get pressure after the quarterback. They like to shut the running attack down. They leave their corners and their safeties and stuff on an island. So if UCLA is able to create some one-on-one separation, they could have a promising day throwing the football, especially if the Panthers aren't able to get home with pressure. The UCLA line is kind of up and down, hit or miss, so you never know if the Panthers will be able to get after them on a play-by-play basis. UCLA could be in for a nice day passing the football if Durbin can go over the top. Ryan Kiana at defensive end, Jordan Davis, couple of nice players there. They also have Bryson Russ, the senior outside pass rusher, who's a very, very solid player. So they do have some guys that can get after the quarterback. Tristan Kraft in the middle of the defense, as well as Nick Ingram, a couple of really nice players there. So the front line for UCLA is a very, very tough matchup for the Panthers. They got some guys that can really push you off the ball, and that allows Jacob Babineau to get after the football. He's an incredible player. The Lake Charles, Louisiana product decided to go out to a different LA rather than stay home and play for LSU, which everybody thought he would do. He decided, you know what, I'm going to go out west. I'm going to go to UCLA, and he's been a fantastic player for them. Really, really solid talent, and a guy that is definitely going to be at the top of the draft board whenever he is able to go to the NFL. Braylon Greer, solid player as well. Decent speed on this UCLA linebacker core, which is always the key. You know, the Panthers have a lot of quick players out wide, and this is the thing UCLA does have. They have some corners at the top of their lineup, Gabriel Cunningham and Mikel Tolbert, that can stay with the Panthers receivers, such as Sino Rogers, Keith Onyango, that have a bit more speed. Those couple of top corners that UCLA has can stay with the Pitt receivers, and I think that could put a little bit of pressure on CJ Kirk to try and force him to make things happen if his receivers aren't able to get a bit of separation. They have Max Hines at free safety, fantastic player, really, really talented. Audrey Smith behind him as well as Cortez Sledge, some good talent there, but Max Hines really good. And then Cedric Hill, the freshman strong safety, is an absolute stud. This guy's a true freshman, and he looks like he could play in the NFL right now. He needs to put on a little bit of size, but in terms of his overall ability and ability to get after the football, he's very, very good. They also have a great kicker in Marcus Johnson, great punter in Jared Robinson. Some really talented players on this UCLA team. That's why they've been so good year after year. And that's why this is going to be a great matchup between the Bruins and the Panthers. Of course, the home field advantage for the Bruins this year, that could be the big key. The Panthers were at home last year, UCLA with the home field advantage this year. So, as always, folks, let me know in the comments what you think is going to happen in the Pitt-UCLA matchup. Thank you so much for watching. Hail to Pitt. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.